is a very interesting set of papers about longitudinal studies that look at end of preschool outcomes through, one of the presentations goes up to the 5th grade and also looks at progress. So first we're going to hear from Lizabeth Malone, who's a senior researcher at Mathematica Policy Research and is the project director of FACES, and she's going to talk to us about about a group of Head Start children and follow them through the end of kindergarten. And then we'll hear from Yange Xue, who is going to talk about a universal preschool that serves a variety of linguistically diverse children as well as culturally diverse children. And we'll look at how they did in 2nd and 3rd grade. And then Margaret Burchinal is from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, the Frank Porter Graham Child Development Center, will talk to us about the NICHD study, and we'll look at performance and progress in elementary school up through the 5th grade. So with that said, and then we'll have our discussant, Doug Clements from University of Colorado, who will talk to us about these 3 sets of papers. So I'm going to, without much more ado, I'm going to turn it over to them so you can hear about the different domains of development and the different supports from home and how they may be interacting, or actually how they may be predicting outcomes with these different samples of children. And keeping in mind, of course, the interrelatedness of development, that one domain affects the other. But we're looking at what are good indicators of how successful we've been in preparing children for what they will face in elementary school.
Good morning. I can echo what John said about this very bright light, so I apologize. I'm probably going to look more at the slides to not be blinded. Thank you. My talk today is going to be entitled The Sustaining Children's Development from Head Start Through Kindergarten, the Role of Home and Classroom Learning Environments. I'd like to acknowledge my co-authors on this piece, Ashley Kopak-Klein and Jerry West. And my presentation today features data, as Sally noted, from the Head Start Family and Child Experiences Survey, the 2009 cohort. The study was funded by the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation. And since 2006, FACES has been conducted by Mathematica Policy Research. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our FACES project officer, Maria Wolverton, who is in the audience, and other partners at OPRE and the Office of Head Start. And we especially want to thank the participants who opened their doors and shared their time with us as part of FACES. Okay. All right. As a brief background here, I think we all can acknowledge that children enter school with varying cognitive and social skills, but it's built on a foundation of the home as well as their early care and education experiences. The nature of those early experiences also varies, both at home, and for this presentation we're focusing about Head Start. However, there's further evidence that's indicating that the level of educational support across home and Head Start appear to be key. Previous research indicates 2 perspectives. One is that higher classroom quality may buffer the effects of homes with fewer resources, but also the potential for mutual support, that high quality home and classroom environments is what is needed for greater benefits in terms of children's development. In this presentation, I'm focusing on 3 research questions. First, considering prior to formal schooling, what is children's level of exposure to learning activities in the home, and how does it compare to their exposure in classrooms? Next, to look, as Sally was indicating, at associations between the home and classroom learning environments, and classroom quality during Head Start with children's spring kindergarten developmental outcomes. And pursuing that a little deeper to consider that idea of buffering versus mutual support, whether the quality of children's Head Start classrooms and the classroom learning environment may moderate the relationship between home learning activities and the later child outcomes. So as a brief overview, FACES was first launched in 1997 as a periodic longitudinal study of program performance. It's been and continues to be a rich source of descriptive data on children's school readiness outcomes and data on the families of the children who are served by Head Start and the programs that serve them. This data has been used to examine changes over time, to provide the descriptions of what children look like at entry as well as exit, and relationships such as I'll examine today. And the goal for this has been for the study to inform policy and practice. In terms of FACES 2009, that focused on newly enrolled children in the fall of 2009. It followed them through their completion of Head Start, which based on whether they were 3 or 4 may have been 1 or 2 years, and it followed them into then their spring of kindergarten. The data were collected in the fall of 2009 and then each spring thereafter. It's a nationally representative sample, but here I have a picture of the sample sizes themselves of where FACES 2009 came from. This study, most importantly, is focusing then on an analytic sample of about 1,350 children who entered Head Start for the first time in fall 2009. They completed Head Start, maybe either 1 or 2 years, and they were enrolled in the spring of kindergarten. In either, the time point wise, this would have been either spring 2011 or spring 2012. FACES collects multiple data sources and information from directors, teachers, classroom observations are conducted. There's also the teachers complete a child report about each child that's sampled, and each wave the child is directly assessed. For today's presentation, I'm focusing on those components you see now in red. To examine each of the research questions, there were a variety of analytic approaches. For the first, to understand what is happening in the environments, we take some descriptive statistics that build on information from the parent report of activities occurring during the Head Start year, either fall or spring. And we measure the Head Start classroom environment by looking at the teacher report on the frequency of activities during the Head Start year, as well as those observed quality measures. And I'll present those in a moment. Then we try to look at the comparison across the environments by using descriptive statistics as well as some chi-squares and t-tests. Finally, for the last research question on associations, we look at whether the Head Start achievement as well, the Head Start environment, as well as the home and classroom to look at fostering achievement by conducting regressions, but also looking at moderation for that, whether there's that buffer or mutual support. Turning to the first research question, what is the children's level of exposure to learning environments in the home, and how does it compare to their exposure in classrooms? Here is a table that we created for home learning environment indices, grouping together the available parent interview items into different domains. The indices here that you see are reflecting the number of activities that occurred during the time the child was attending Head Start, fall or spring. This is the mean number of activities and then the actual range. So, for example, literacy and language exposure in the home was measured by 5 items, such as told the child a story. And on average, Head Start children are experiencing 3.8 out of 5 of these home learning activities during their time in Head Start. Similar index construction was done for mathematics, where you can see that virtually all children experienced the 2 items that were asked of parents. Cognitive and cultural activities, such as going to a museum, and other supportive activities, such as having conversations about what happened that day in Head Start. What we did next to really think about exposure is to collapse these count variables into categories of what we call low exposure, which is less than half of the possible activities, the blue bar. Middle exposure, where it's half but not all of the activities, that's the beige bar. And then the red bar is high exposure, where all the activities possible were reported as occurring by parents. From this perspective, we find that across the time in Head Start, most children experience a variety of home learning activities, with 90% experiencing at least half of the literacy and language, so that's combining the beige and the red bar, 99% experiencing the math activities, 76% experiencing cultural cognitive activities, and 99% experiencing other supportive activities. What is important to note is that these indices are relative occurrence. Most of these items were yes, no, as occurring in the past week or the past month. So this does not reflect any information on the quality of those activities or more detailed information on frequency or intensity. Now, for the second part of that research question about how does it compare to the classroom, we took a similar approach to create 2 classroom learning environment indices by grouping teacher interview items into the domains of literacy and language and mathematics, And this was based on their report of a frequency of an activity happening daily or almost daily in a typical week. We also focused on here for this analysis on two particular aspects of observed quality: the provisions for learning factor score from the Eckers-R and the instructional support domain from the class. You see here that the mean scores for children's classroom experiences. So it's really important because we are trying to look across. These are information at the child level. These are averages and percentages that you'll see in the next slide about the children. So for example, children experienced 10.5 out of 12 literacy and language activities daily or almost daily while they were in Head Start. Okay, similar to the home, we grouped the classroom indices into categories. And so most children, 97% or higher, experience at least half the literacy and math activities daily or almost daily. For observed quality, we collapsed the scores based on the combination of the distribution as well as the publisher quote points. So there's information on the slide, but for the Eckers-R, a low level was defined as a score less than 3. Middle exposure was 3 to 5, and then the high exposure group here was a score of 5 or higher, so that's collapsing that good or excellent developer cut points. For the class, we have the score of 1 to 2 in the low group. The middle level is 2 to 3, which would still be in the low range under the publisher cut points, and then high exposure here is reflecting a score of 3 or higher. So what we see is that 81% of children are in this middle exposure range on the Eckers-R provisions for learning. That is the score of 3 to 5, and 55% of children Head Start classrooms were in this middle range exposure of an instructional support score of 2. So turning to try to compare across those two settings, we compared them by finding overall we took that we see that they're similar from classroom learning environments are similar from children from different home environments. So we first looked at correlations between the continuous indices, those tables I showed you, and those correlations tend to be low, indicating no linear relationship between the number of classroom activities and the observed quality to the number of home activities that children are experiencing. As very few children experience low levels at both home and classroom from those graphs you saw, this is really not too unexpected. What we next considered were those categorical indices, those low, middle, high exposures, to focus mostly on the children then in middle group and the high group in their home learning environments. And here too, the chi-square tests we did with the parent and teacher reported activities show that children's classroom environment did not vary by the home learning environment the children have. For observed quality, we conducted t-tests, and we found that the average Eckers-R and class scores did not differ between children from middle and high quality home learning environments. So these findings indicate that the Head Start classrooms tend to provide the same foundation for children regardless of their home experience. Notably, about half of children experience middle or high exposure in both the home and the classroom learning environments. For example, 50% of children experience a middle or high literacy environment in both of the settings. The cross overlap is exposure tended to be in that middle level. So if you think about those bar charts, that beige bar. So while no differences were evident across the groups, it's still important to highlight that for about 1/4 to 1/3 of the children, they experienced more activities in the classroom than they did see at the home. So for the second research question on the associations between the Head Start and home learning environments and kindergarten outcomes, we put together regression models for children's outcomes. And what you see here are the outcomes we examined. They're each in separate models, tapping language, literacy, mathematics, executive functioning, and socio-emotional development. So the first 4 areas were part of the direct child assessment, and the socio-emotional were based on teacher reports of children's approaches to learning. For the key predictors here, we included the continuous scores for the home and classroom indices and the continuous scores for the observed quality. We also then, to examine the third research question to see if the class exposure moderates the home exposure, we included interactions between the home literacy exposure indices with the classroom literacy exposure indices and the observed quality. This is a quick glean of the controls we include in our model. We try to capture information about their entry ability with a common measure. We factored in child and family characteristics, and again, since this was longitudinal, we wanted to take into account characteristics of Head Start as well as characteristics of their kindergarten environment. So what we found is that children's learning environments during Head Start with the number of home literacy activities was positively associated with higher receptive vocabulary and literacy skills, in particular measured by the Woodcock-Johnson word attacked. The provisions for learning in the classroom was also associated with higher receptive vocabulary. The quality of the instructional support found in the Head Start classrooms was positively associated with mathematics, as measured by the applied problems. However, children's learning environments was then not associated with kindergarten letter word identification skills, executive functioning, or with approaches to learning. For the third research question, we focused our examination of the interaction between the environments using the literacy indices as reported by parents and teachers and the observed quality. No interactions were found between those home and classroom environments. So the Head Start classroom experiences do not appear to moderate the association between children's home environment and during Head Start and their later kindergarten outcomes. So, in summary, FACES 2009 is showing us that children's home and classroom learning environments provide them with a variety of experiences. Their exposure to learning activities at home or in the Head Start classrooms is generally similar or higher in classrooms. However, if you think about overall the associations, there's relatively few associations for home and classroom experiences during Head Start with kindergarten achievement. Though there did see a couple that actually linked with receptive vocabulary. In terms of, I had this slide already, so it might not be that targeted message Linda was asking for, but if we think about implications for informing future research and policy, understanding the role of children's home and classroom environments supports policy and programmatic decisions about how practices foster children's school readiness to sustain development longitudinally. And this may help to point to program decisions around home and program alignment, family initiatives, and quality improvement. Our analyses also reveal potential design considerations for future research and policy. By relying on parent or teacher report, as we did here, our indices sometimes included a limited number of items. Further, some of the items are not necessarily fully aligned to the skills being measured in the assessment tools, so particularly for mathematics. Therefore, the measurement of classroom quality may require more domain-specific tools, such as around literacy or mathematics, to understand those associations potentially better. The home indices, like I said, are based on an occurrence of a just yes-no of a set of activities, and FACES, while it provides a national sample of Head Start, and it's continual over time, there's the potential of future design considerations for such large-scale surveys that they could include information about dosage beyond breadth, that's really what we have here, and quality, perhaps with parent-child interactions or home observations. And here is a slide with some more information and the website on FACES. Thank you.
Good morning. My presentation today is on children's preschool skills in LAUP. How do they predict elementary school achievement? LAUP is a Los Angeles universal preschool. Research evidence shows that children's early skills are essential for their later success in school and have been one focus of early childhood policy. Identifying the skills critical for school readiness is an important step in developing interventions that aim at addressing the achievement gap between advantaged and disadvantaged children. Many studies have linked school outcomes to preschool skills. For example, using 6 large-scale data sets, Duncan and colleagues found that the strongest predictor of later school achievement includes math, reading, and attention skills at school entry. A meta-analysis of the results shows that early math skills have the greatest predictive power, followed by reading and attention skills. And some later studies replicated these findings. It should be noted that in Duncan's study, all of the measures included some measurement of language. All were orally administered and had varying language demands. And in the literature, we know very little about how early skills predict later school achievement for children from diverse ethnic and linguistic backgrounds. So in this study, we examine how school readiness skills at the end of preschool predict achievement in elementary school in an ethnically and linguistically diverse sample of children who attended LAUP. So our first research question is, how do school readiness skills at the end of preschool predict academic performance in second and third grade? In addition, we also look at the role of preschool experiences. Our second research question is, how are children's demographic characteristics and the family risk and the protective factors in preschool associated with academic performance in elementary school? This study is part of a larger project that examined the long-term educational outcomes of children who attended LAUP once they reached second and third grade. In the larger project, we selected 5 school districts with varying community contexts in which LAUP have been implemented. These are the school districts serving a high-needs population with a sufficient number of children who attended LAUP, varied in school district size, and varied in level of existing non-LAUP subsidized early childhood services. The districts provided administrative school records for students on demographic information and state standardized test scores. We matched the data on children in LAUP administrative records and the students in the school records to identify children who likely attended an LAUP program. And the matching factors include children's first name, last name, date of birth, and home address. For the current study, we also drew on information collected during the Universal Preschool Child Outcome Study we called APCOS, which is a multiple-phase project examining LAUP children's outcomes in preschool. We included 2 cohorts of children from APCOS whose second and third grade test scores were available at the time of the study, APCOS 2 in 2007 to 2008, and APCOS 3 in 2009 to 2010. Using the same matching approach, we implemented a second round of matching between LAUP students found in the school district data and the data from APCOS for the 2 cohorts of children to identify LAUP students who participate in APCOS. So a total of 300 second graders and 220 third graders were identified across cohorts and the school years. Slightly less than half are boys, more than half are DLLs, about 3/4 are Hispanic, and white and African American are each 6 to 7% of the sample. Test scores from the school district include English language arts and math scaled scores of the California Standards Test, the CST, in second and third grade. The CST measures students' progress toward achieving California's state-adopted academic content standards. For measures of preschool skills in APCOS, we used the UWPVT English and English bilingual edition to measure children's language skills. Since the standardization samples of the two versions are different, we use the IRT approach to combine the scores for the two versions and created IRT scores. We use the rapid letter naming task to measure children's letter knowledge, and the WJ spelling to measure spelling and early writing. For math, we use the ECLSB math test, which has also been used in physics. We assess the children's executive functioning using the pencil typing task, and the scores are the percentage of time children respond correctly. In this study, the children are often learning more than one language, so we were trying to remove the language demands of the preschool measures as much as possible. Among these measures, EOW PVT SBE, rapid letter naming, and ECLSB math were all conceptually scored, and the pencil typing was largely nonverbal. Regarding other preschool factors, we examined the child demographics, including age, gender, DIL status, and race ethnicity. Family risk factors include mother born outside of the United States, single-parent household, large household, mother not employed, maternal education less than high school, and the family income below the poverty threshold. Family protective factors include home learning activities, such as read to child, tell stories, activities in the community, such as visit a library, attend a community event, program involvement activities, such as volunteer in classroom, attend school meeting, and the services used by household, such as ESL classes, mental health services. For analysis, we pooled data across cohorts and school years, conducting the analysis at the grade level. For example, examining CST scores for all second graders, regardless of school year. Based on the available data, our analysis includes second grade CST scores for 2 school years and the third grade CST scores for 1 year. We conducted regressions using child demographic characteristics, child risk and protective factors, and the preschool test scores to predict second or third grade English language arts and math scores. For each of the 4 outcomes of second grade English language arts and math and the third grade English language arts and math, we ran 5 separate models, with each model including 1 preschool measurement score. So not adjusting for the shared variance among the preschool measures, but we included all child family characteristics and experiences in each of the models. So that's 20 models in total. All the continuous variables in the analysis were transformed to z-scores. This allows us to compare the magnitude of the coefficients in the models. This slide shows the associations of preschool skills and the English language arts scores in second and third grade. We found that the children's preschool skills were all positively associated with elementary school outcomes in English language arts, controlling for child demographic and child risk and protective factors. The bars in this figure show the effect sizes for the associations. In second grade, on the left side, the strongest predictors are ECLSB math and rapid letter naming. In third grade, language skills as measured by the EOW PVT are the strongest predictor, followed by ECLSB math. Across the preschool measures, 1 standard deviation increase in preschool skills was associated with about 1/4 to 1/2 a standard deviation increase in second or third grade English language arts skills. And these are the results for math outcomes. Similarly, preschool skills were also positively associated with elementary school math outcomes. ECLSB math at the end of preschool is the strongest predictor of CST math scores in both second and third grade, followed by rapid letter naming. Again, across the preschool measures, one standard deviation increase in preschool skills was associated with about 1/4 to 1/2 a standard deviation increase in second and third grade math skills. This slide shows which preschool factors are related to second or third grade English language arts scores. Across all analysis, gender predicts second or third grade scores. Girls consistently scored higher than boys. In most analyses, but not all, we see more differences by race ethnicity. White students and students in other race and ethnicity category scored higher than Hispanic students. But none of the family risk factors were consistently related to English language arts scores. Moving to protective factors, home learning activities during preschool were positively associated with students' English language arts scores in second grade and third grade. However, these findings was not present across all models. Notably, home learning environment did not predict second or third grade scores. One analysis also included the measure of language or executive functioning. So this indicates that home learning activities during preschool are associated with language and executive functioning during preschool as well. Oops. This slide shows which preschool factors are related to second and third grade math scores. In most of the analysis, but not all, we see some differences by race ethnicity in second grade. White students generally scored higher than Hispanic students. In third grade, white students and the students in the other race ethnicity group scored higher than Hispanic students in all the models. In risk factors, we see that having a mother who was not employed during preschool actually was associated with higher third grade math scores, but not in all analyses. It is important to keep in mind that we have controlled for other risk factors in the model, which means that we may be seeing these positive associations for those families that do not face the other risk factors such as poverty and low mother education. Moving to protective factors, home learning activities during preschool were positively associated with students' math scores in only third grade for most of the models. To summarize, our findings suggest that preschool skills are important for academic performance in elementary school for children with diverse ethnic and linguistic background. We found that math skills in preschool are the strongest predictor for CST math scores in both second and third grade, and English language arts scores in second grade, which is consistent with the Duncan study findings. By grade 3, when reading comprehension becomes increasingly important, and comprehension is a greater portion of the English language arts assessments, the EOW-PVT has the strongest association with the CST English language arts scores because the EOW-PVT taps background conceptual knowledge that are important for reading comprehension. In most analyses, we also see that home learning activities provided in preschool are positively associated with students' English language arts scores in second grade and both English language arts and math in third grade, which suggests the importance of home learning experiences during preschool to children's school success. For more information about the study, please email me or my co-authors. And finally, we would like to thank the children and teachers of LA Up who participated in this study, school districts that provided the school data, and the First 5 LA for supporting this research. Thank you.
Okay, Burchinal. Great. So good morning. I'm very pleased to be here this morning, and I'm happy to be following these two wonderful papers, and I think hopefully this paper builds on what has been presented by looking at what predicts academic and social trajectories through grade 5. Okay, so let's see which is down. Okay, I'd like to acknowledge the contributions of many people for this paper. The authors include Amy Pace, Rebecca Alber, Roberta Galankoff, and Kathy Hurst-Pasek from Temple and the University of Washington. Some of this work came out of work that was funded by OPRE and involved Tama Hawley, Beth Hare, and Marty Zaslow. And then I'd also like to say that the base of the work came from funding from NICHD for the NICHD study of early child care and youth development. Okay, now, sorry, what am I doing? Okay, here we go. Sorry, this is a little weird. I'm just gonna look over here. I'm not trying to ignore the audience, but I'm not coordinated enough to move slides forward in two different places. So first of all, I think we all know that we have based a lot of policies in this country on the idea that school readiness skills are really important. That school academic and social skills at entry to kindergarten predict learning trajectories through elementary school and beyond. We see considerable evidence of preschool skills being related to school outcomes. Okay, let's see if I can do that. In terms of general cognitive skills such as language, general knowledge, problem solving, executive function skills, academic skills, emotional well-being, and health. The achievement gap emerges early, and by age 5 at entry to school, we see a very well-established achievement gap, and it persists during the school years. All of this evidence has led to public policies that focus on promoting these skills, especially for children from low-income families. We fund public preschool education, such as Head Start, pre-kindergarten. We have quality improvement initiatives, such as the QRS and Head Start designation and renewal system. And we have standards for school readiness skills in almost all states that articulate what we think children need to know in order to succeed in school. But in terms of all of this evidence, there are 3 places that we think there's need for further work. First of all, we really want to ask the question about what are the relative contributions of school readiness skills to predicting academic and social trajectories in primary grades. And there are three areas. The first one is that only a few studies have looked at multiple dimensions of school readiness simultaneously. Most studies look at one dimension at a time. And all of those studies that have done this have looked at outcomes at a single time point rather than looking at outcomes in terms of acquisition of skills during the school year. This is problematic because of selection bias issues, where it could be that those skills, the relationship between preschool skills and outcome skills in grade school, if you're only looking at a single year, could reflect all kinds of other factors besides that one preschool skill variable that you're looking at. Very few studies have separated cognitive and academic skills, and this we view as a real major problem. So, for example, almost all of the school readiness work has combined literacy and language into a single domain, and then used that composite score to predict subsequent skills. Very few, if any, of the studies have separated like language and early reading skills. For example, the Duncan study doesn't have any measures of language in it. And similarly, a lot of the work has not separated things like problem solving and early academic skills in math. So this was a second issue that we really wanted to focus on in our work. And then none of them have looked at multiple dimensions as predictors of change over time. And again, we feel like this is a really important question because school is designed to teach. It's about learning, and learning is reflected in what and how much change you see from one year to the next. It's not truly reflected in the levels, the level scores that you have in any one grade. So these are the issues that we tried to look at in this study, looking at all of these academics, all of these preschool readiness skills, separating out cognitive and academic skills, and looking at both level of skill during grade school and change over time in skills during grade school. We used the data from the NICHD study of early child care. This is 1,364 children who were born in 1991 and followed through high school. They were born in 10 sites across the country. This shows the 10 sites where children were randomly selected within each of the sites, but the sampling was stratified to try to ensure adequate representation of major demographic groups. We did succeed, but the sample is predominantly middle class and predominantly white. We measured the children and families a lot, so we really owe a lot to these families for being willing to stick with us. We had home visits and lab visits when the children were 6, 15, 24, 36, and 54 months, and in grades 1, 3, and 5. In addition, if the child was enrolled in school in child care during those preschool ages, early childhood ages, we observed their child care and we observed their classrooms in grades 1, 3, and 5. Okay, so these are the school readiness measures that we have in this data set. We created a language composite from the preschool language scale, the PLS, using auditory comprehension and expressive communication, combining that with the Woodcock-Johnson picture vocabulary score. We had a measure of executive function, focusing on attention, using the continuous performance task, a measure of reading, letter-word identification on the Woodcock-Johnson, math, applied problems on the Woodcock-Johnson. We created a social-emotional composite. We focused on the scores from the kindergarten teacher at entry to kindergarten so that we could have a measure for all children, regardless of whether they were in childcare. This was a combination of the teacher's ratings on the child behavior checklist and on the social skills rating scale. And then finally, we had a rating by the parents of the child's overall health. child outcomes as well. We collected them in grades 1, 3, and 5. This included the Woodcock-Johnson picture vocabulary test as a measure of language skills, the Woodcock-Johnson letter word from grades 1 and 3, and passage comprehension in grades 5, applied problems across all 3 grades, behavior problems based on teacher ratings on the child behavior checklist, which technically is the teacher TRF, teacher something something. Anyway, and then the teacher's rating of social skills on the social skills rating scale. The analyses were growth curve analyses where each child had an individual intercept and slope. We ran analyses separately for all 5 of these outcome scores. In each of those analyses, we conducted a piecewise regression. So we wanted to take the change over time and ask about how much change was there between grades 1 and 3 and grades 3 and 5. So we wanted to look at the extent to which these preschool skills in each of the domains predicted change from grades 1 to 3 and then separately from grades 3 to 5. Here are the outcomes again. And then the covariates were included site, ethnicity, gender, mother's education and marital status during early childhood, percent of time in poverty during early childhood, the age of entry of the child to kindergarten, and whether the child was diagnosed with a disability at entry to kindergarten. So what did we find? Well, first of all, despite the fact I want to focus on change, I'm going to talk about the level scores. So from the growth curve analysis, this is the prediction of the intercept, where the intercept in this model represents the child's mean score from grades 1, 3, and 5. So the first thing, so each of these columns represents a separate analysis. So for example, when we look at the child's average language scores from grade 1 to 3, we see that entry skills in language and early reading predict school-age language scores. That entry scores in language, reading, and math predict school-age math scores. Entry scores in language, reading, and math predict children's math scores and reading scores, sorry. And that for behavior problems, entry scores in attention and social emotional skills, for social skills, language, and social emotional skills. So from this, we draw several conclusions. First of all, not surprisingly, entry skills to school are strong predictors of school-age skills within domain. That, for example, for reading, entry skills in reading were the strongest predictor, and in part it's the same measure. For math, entry skills in math were the strongest predictor of math. For language, entry skills in language were the strongest predictor of language. But interestingly for us, language skills at entry is the single best predictor of level skills across all these school-age outcomes. And even when we're controlling for all of these other things. So unlike what Duncan found and other people found, when you include language as well as and separate it from literacy, it turns out to be the single best predictor. Attention, in this case is CPT, predicted social but not academic outcomes. Okay, now turning to acquisition of skills from grades 1 to 3. Now this is the prediction looking at the estimate of change in the growth curve analyses. And again, each of these columns represents the prediction of that measure of change for each child. So the first thing that comes out is that we see that children who enter with higher skills seem to be acquiring skills slightly slower, more slowly when they get to school. And this can be interpreted as actually a slight closing of the achievement gap, because the converse is children who are entering with lower skills are showing slightly larger gains during the school years. So we see that for language, children who entered with better language skills show slightly slower gains in language skills over time. For reading, children who entered with better with better language skills actually show bigger gains in language over time. And within the other domains, we see this: if you enter with higher math skills, you show less gain in math. If you enter with higher reading skills, you show less gain in reading. Same pattern comes out when we look at grades 3 to 5. So children who enter with better language skills show less gains. Children who enter with better reading skills show less gains. Children who enter with better math skills show less gains. But children who enter with better language skills show bigger gains in reading, also from grades 3 to 5 as well as grades 1 to 3. So the conclusions from this analysis of change over time that we drew were, first of all, we see relatively few predictions of acquisitions of skills during the year. There were, those tables were big and not many values were bolded. Schooling appears to be reducing the achievement gap slightly. Higher skill levels within a domain predicted slightly slower acquisition, slightly smaller acquisitions of those skills within that domain. Language skills at entry to school was the only one that predicted larger gains over time, and that was within reading, both from grades 1 to 3 and 3 to 5. So in summary, we see cognitive, academic, and social skills at entry to school predict subsequent skill levels. Schooling appears to be reducing the achievement gap. But from this, we really conclude that perhaps there really should be more focus on language within early childhood education. That language skills were not only our best predictor of overall skill levels, both for academic and for social skills, but they were the only, language skills at entry to school were the only preschool domain that predicted larger gains within any one of these academic or social school age outcomes. And we're concerned because it seems like we've learned relatively well how to increase reading skills and even to some degree increase math skills within early childhood education. I'm not sure we're as effective at knowing how to promote language skills. Unfortunately, language skills, according to this analysis, seems to be the best predictor. So I hope that we can do more in that area in the future. Thank you.
Okay, I have to coordinate the two because I got a whole lot of different notes on this one. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes. Doug Clements here, University of Denver. I was honored to be asked to comment on these papers. They were presented in the book in a different order, so I'm going to go in the order because he's already got my slides. Okay. So I switched the slides on my computer and then says, oh no, that won't work. In preparing to be a discussant, I just thought I'd go online and say, what makes a good discussant? And the number one thing that most people list is don't read the papers the night before. Uh-oh. No, actually I got them far enough ahead and actually did write them ahead. It also said stay on time, so let's see if I can do that too. That was the second most important thing. So, starting with Lizabeth here. Let's overview. I'm going to get them all on the screen because it's going to be too hard to coordinate all these. Here we go. Head Start Faces, 2009. Children's home and classroom learning environments provide them with a variety of experiences. Children exposure to activities was higher in classrooms than at home. And classroom learning environments are similar from children from different home learning environments, which is nice. One half were exactly similar in home and school, and about a fourth to a third were higher at school. So interesting stuff. There was few associations for home and classroom experiences during Head Start with kindergarten achievement, although you did see home literacy predicting the PVVC and the word attack skills. The Eckers-R provisions for learning correlated with the PBVT, and the class instructional support correlated with mathematics, which is really a lesson I think we need to learn for sure. So, quick comments. It supports the existing literature pretty clearly, what is predictive and the like. It's different from older research in that more math might be happening in classrooms. That's interesting. We find the same thing in New York City. Finally, the attention given to math seems to be bubbling up a little bit. It's no surprise from what I see in the literature that the class instructional support is kind of low on average. But again, the prediction of math shows that high quality instruction is probably really important for mathematics, probably because it's not as much a familiar domain for teachers and the like. Whoops. Okay, that's no good. Yeah, there you go. Thank you so much in the back. The math looks great, and that's a problem to me, because even though more math might be happening in classrooms, remember that I was confused for a minute, Elizabeth, because she has range down there, and there's two interpretations of that. It's the range of possible scores, or it's the range of observed scores. It turns out it's the range of possible scores. So when you have everybody doing both activities that they do at home, remember that there's only two possible activities that they could possibly say that about. The same for the 10 activities at school. Are those the most important activities? How frequently do they happen? And given that instructional support correlation in the same study, how important is it that those things aren't just covered but done well? For instance, in early mathematics, a lot of people say they count all the time, but if they're rote counting to 5, or if they're counting objects meaningfully for a purpose and trying to solve problems with them, just 100 degrees opposite in terms of the effect on kids, the research says. So I think the databases here are just limited. We have to learn what we can from them, but we better take all the results with a grain of salt when you're limited with those kind of observations. Okay, let's take a look, and Peg's came up next in the book, so I'm going to talk about hers for a minute. Again, the internet suggestions say you should always review all the results because people forget these complex studies. So here we go. Relative contribution to distinct core competencies to changes in academic and social skills using the NICHD study there. Overview. Cognitive, academic, and social skills at entry to school predict subsequent school levels. The strongest predictions were within domains. Interesting. Language skills at entry appeared to provide the best prediction across domains. Schooling appears to reduce the achievement gap slightly, and language skills were the only school readiness skills that predicted faster acquisition of school-age skills. She made a good point that these are very important notes. Good design. She had controls over there beyond what a lot of people did, and questions beyond what a lot of people have did with these databases in the past. Her results are similar to literature, with a slight exception of Duncan L's, as she pointed out, identification as math a predictor, but she also pointed out he didn't have a language measure in those results. Correlations, though, were infrequently statistically significant. I noticed a typo there, sorry about that, significant. And those that are low, don't give a real firm picture very often, except for the kind of language thing. One other thing I'd like to point out, we should stop saying fade out, okay? It's ridiculous. When you see the results that Peg just gave about the early skills, for instance, having a negative relationship with later skills, what can that mean? Except for kids who come early spin their wheels in kindergarten and primary grade classrooms without learning new material many times until the kids who didn't have those skills finally catch up. That's not fade out, that's catch up. It's a different kind of thing, but we have imbued the literature with fade out as an expression so often that we forget that the phrase comes from a statistical anomaly of the reduction of effect size, not from the loss of competencies on the part of kids. And it means very different things for policy, practice, and research. Okay. Yange Xue, how about this one? Overview. Preschool skills, important for academic performance in elementary school. Does prediction of early skills predict later school skills? And does that differ for children from different ethnic and linguistical backgrounds? It's a long-term outcomes of children who attended Los Angeles Universal Preschool. Whoops, sorry. Lack of sync there. That's what I just said. Math skills in preschool were the strongest predictor for math scores in second and third grade and ELA scores in second grade. In third grade, background and conceptual knowledge has the strongest association with reading, a really important result there. And home learning activities in preschool are positively associated with kids' ELA scores in second and both ELA and math scores in third. So very quickly, right, girls were higher, white and other were higher than Hispanic. In math, girls were higher, mom at home higher, third grade scores. Those were the results you've already seen. So some comments on those. I was wondering, Yange Xue, whether the relationships were different for different groups. I don't remember, maybe I missed that in the paper, but that would be interesting because you made in your preface, you made a big deal of let's look at the different groups. That hasn't been done, but that wasn't emphasized as much in the slides that I saw. The interrelationships of correlates aren't in your design, right? And that would be useful to look at too, right? So controlling for everything else, what's the predictive power? I think that's to a large extent the reason PEG's results look so different than you in sheer size of relationships. Math's still predictive though, and I do think there may be something there that math is cognitively fundamental. Not that you know your shapes, not that you know how to count, but the thinking and reasoning in mathematics may be accounting for this, like the language kind of scores do. So the other thing I learned from my internet thing is don't talk about your own research. For God's sake, you're supposed to be discussing the other papers, right? Sorry. First, they also warn you, don't talk so much about across the things. And I thought that was an interesting comment I've always seen people go across. But anyway, across the three, predictive language skills are most predictive or not. There's a little difference across the three studies. So more to be learned from that. My own research, I will make it really short. We all know correlation is not, and we've all heard that and said that 100 times, right? But recent work that we did, Julie Saram and I did with Greg, Drew Bailey, Tyler Watts and all, has shown some interesting stuff about correlations. In other words, Greg's famous for saying this math is most predictive. But in our most recent couple of papers, we used a state trait model in which, for instance, just bear with me here a little bit. I'm gonna switch to this one completely. I think I can now. I didn't add anything to this. In which, for instance, the trait effects are driven by a variety of factors, environmental, personal. They're all mixed together. They're all confounded, so be careful about making any conclusions on that, but have stable influence on mathematics achievement over time, right? The community, the culture, the low-resource communities that the kids might live in, et cetera, et cetera. State effects capture the direct effects and changes from a previous test score on the next test score, right? So what we found is something like this in our triad database. There's strong trait correlations, larger than the state correlations. And when you look at this kind of thing, across the time, you can see that the correlations there from trait overwhelm the correlations from the state kind of things. So what does that mean? It means we, again, have to take a real grain of salt to all the correlational literature, like epidemiological studies, which have come up with a million things. I'll be done before then, thank you. Beta-carotene is wonderful for you. No, it actually causes problems. Most of the vitamin research, for instance, has shown huge correlations until you do a randomized clinical trial, and then you actually get negative effects, as many or more times as you do positive effects. So in our study, treatment had no effect on trait math, but sizable effect on state math. But it temporarily changed the structure of the model, but it implies a need for continual high-quality instruction, sure, because we got to keep providing support for those kids. Preschool is not a magical inoculation that sends you into kindergarten, so the implications might be the same, but the optimism which we look at, let's do a great job preschool, it correlates way to college entry and everything else, has to be significantly mitigated by this knowledge that these trait effects overwhelm the state effects. And so correlational literature like these kind of analyses really has to be taken very carefully as a suggestion, but we have to follow up with causal kind of designs to know. Thank you. Thank you. That's it.
So we have a few minutes for questions from the audience. If you would like to ask anything, please make sure to say it clearly, and then I will try to repeat it for you. Yeah.
So in the second presentation by Dr. Xue, I wonder, so on the one hand you have your language learning population, which as we know is extremely diverse, and on the other hand you have your non-GLL population, right? But I don't know about Los Angeles, but the work of my colleagues and myself shows that when we look at the so-called non-GLL population, in the sense that they're English speakers, at least in New York City, we only get like in Head Start, only about a third of the children are actually learning standard American English, which is the tests that you're using have been standardized on. We have 2/3 of the children who actually speak other varieties of English, and these children, they don't get, we're talking about Jamaican English, Barbados English in New York, a very big Caribbean population, as well as African American English, and the tests are not adapted. So on the one hand, you have the diversity of your DLL population, and you have a non-DLL population that's not really, that's not really compatible with the norming of the test. So maybe that's why you don't get any effect. In addition to the fact that maybe your DLLs, they need to be split across language groups or whatever, or at least a level of exposure or whatever. So I'm just, I'm kind of worried because I feel bidialectal children have been extremely neglected compared to DLL children. And, they also make up the population and the linguistic richness of this population, and they need to be thought about in terms of vocabulary. Their vocabulary is different, as my colleague Tampi Champion has shown. Their phonology, their grammar, etc., and the tests are not adapted to them. I just wanted to hear your reaction.
Okay, so I'm going to respond to that. I've worked with Yange on the study. One of the reasons we have ethnicity in there, so in the other group are largely most of them were our English speakers, and they went across ethnic groups. So that included individuals who were Black, who were Asian. It was a variety. The vast majority were Hispanic Latino, and they had so Spanish was predominant. Though in some families even we had multiple languages because we had. There's a real mix of culture and language there. So in some ways, it's very difficult to divide out and to look at, and our sample sizes for looking within those other ethnic groups were much smaller, particularly when we kept those that we were able to follow into second and third grade. I realize that. But the sample sizes were too small to try to unpack the language there.
Hi, I had a question about the same study. You had mentioned that the expressive one-word picture vocabulary test was the best predictor of third grade background knowledge. If I was understanding that correctly, I was wondering, it didn't seem like the EOW PVT was featured in your graphs about looking at predictors. Maybe I missed that, but I was just wondering about that language measure.
It was in the graph for the third grade Can we pull up the?
I can't pull up, but maybe they can pull
No.
up. So
Yeah, it's in the graph, there are two versions of the EOWPVT, the English version and the SBE version, and we combined the scores using RRT approach. So to look at both the DLL children and the English-speaking children.
And I see.
Oh,
So-
yeah, here. So on the
So in third grade, you found that it was the strongest.
yes, it's in third grade. I think probably in third grade the comprehension is a greater part of the English language arts assessments, and that's where the EOWPVT shows the strongest association, because EOWPVT also measures the background and conceptual knowledge, and for comprehension you need those background and conceptual knowledge.
So the story, I think I took away from your talk that the story was really about math being the best predictor, but here it looks like it's math in earlier and then language. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah.
So it's
mhm,
more
the-
consistent with Peg's results than I guess that I had previously thought after your talk.
Yeah, and especially our sample is diverse in terms of ethnicity and language. So for this population, the language plays a really important role, especially for third grade achievement.
Thank you.
up here.
My question's for all of you. I'm intrigued by the kind of horse race notion of is it math or is it language or is it vocab? And obviously, we can't just do one. So I'm wondering if you would comment on the implications for preschool curriculum findings.
I mean, I think that this is the issue that worries me. I feel like our preschool programs are very good at teaching sound blending, letter identification, early number, counting, cardinality. I don't think we have curricula that are very good at teaching language skills, or perhaps some of the other more cognitive skills.
Yeah, I think that's a concern of mine also, that as we've moved towards those phonology and letter naming skills, we're not reading the really rich books and the really rich literature, because people are trying to do things that will help with word awareness and letter awareness, and that isn't giving them the really important language skills that they need, and that language skills, background knowledge, all the things they're going to need to draw on as they get into the intermediate grades. It helps them initially, but they really need that rich background for later. They need that language, and they need the general knowledge that they also gain.
And, as long as I'm on my soapbox, I also worry that curricula like creative curriculum and high scope that are so open-ended allow for teachers to create activities, but they don't structure the interactions between the teachers and the children during those activities. And that's where language learning happens. It's when the teacher engages in conversations and ensures that the children are responding and having multiple turn conversations. And I worry that we really don't see very much of that in many of our preschools, and especially in the preschools, in Head Start and public pre-K.
Yeah, and a lot of the types of questions they need to ask, they don't really have the guidance for that in a lot of the curriculum they have now. What questions to ask, what types of comments to make, what language to try to introduce. It's really not there in a lot of the curricula that are commonly used in a lot of
And this
programs.
is where I think something like building blocks, a more domain-specific curriculum, actually builds in a lot more interaction, verbal interaction between teachers and children than some of the other more open-ended curricula.
And thanks for that, and thanks for math, but we haven't mentioned science. And
Right.
remember, when we're talking about language, one of the highest predictors is whether kids are doing science. And books are great for general knowledge and vocabulary in general, but both for math and science, you also need absolute hands-on and interaction around the hands-on. I'm sure that's
Interaction,
what you guys mean,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah, the
wanted to
interaction needs
emphasize
to
that.
be there.
Yeah.
I think that because teachers don't have really strong curricula across all the areas, and it's hard to have one that goes across all the areas, that's why I think that if they start with a book at some time, it will help to facilitate that interaction, but certainly when there are curricula available, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Somebody up here? Oh, okay.
I know this is all research, but it was Ron Ferguson, Dr. Ferguson
Yes.
from Harvard, who said the average preschooler comes in with a 2,000 word or greater deficit. And his suggestion was in training both parents and teachers, instead of saying, his example was, get over here versus I want you to sit in that brown chair here. And in teacher training, because I work with a high school program to train high school students to teach in a preschool, that comes as an odd thing, that they're very resistant to using full sentences with more adjectives and adverbs and to be very explicit. Is that sort of what you're talking about?
Yes.
Beyond curriculum?
Bathing them in language, good language, specific, no pronouns. If you can avoid them, use the specific nouns and adjectives as much as you can so that you broaden it.
So would that include parent training or suggested newsletters home to your
Yes,
parents about?
absolutely. Anybody disagree? Sorry.
Sorry, this is a question and a comment. So it's interesting that people are talking about language and literacy, but we have to remember that literacy is rooted in oral language as well. I mean, in like oral language, oral storytelling as well. And a lot of families come to us with, you know, these wonderful traditions, and maybe we need to do more to value those and not only the printed word. But my comment was with the last presentation. So there was some work a while ago by Helen Neville who conducted who compared the effect of 3 interventions on preschoolers. So one was a language intervention, one was a music intervention, and one was an executive function intervention. And she showed that only the language and the music had like effects across domains, which is in a way what you showed. So I was wondering if you, so of course, you know, language is more part of our, more like universal in terms of our cultures, and music is not, I mean, I don't mean universal in terms of at a collective level, but at an individual level. But I was wondering if you knew that study and if you think your results are compatible with that study.
Thank you. It sounds to me like we're drawing somewhat similar conclusions. You're right. There was nothing about things like music or art in this database to look at that question, but it makes very good sense to me that a focus on music, which is linked to learning patterns, to, you know, there's a lot in music that is very basic to learning, and especially to cognitive skills. So I would think that makes good sense.
I think we've gone over our time now, and I thank you all for coming and for your wonderful attention and your interesting comments and questions. Thank you.